Hello! In this video we're going to have a look at debugging, but not with an IDE, but rather by using the Vim text editor, the editor that I use for most of my projects still. Just like PHP Storm and VS Code, it is also possible to use Xdebug single-step debugger with this editor. Let's have a look on how to install this. For this demo I'll be using Xdebug's own website, which I can run with PHP's built-in web server. I can now access this through localhost, so let me just click on this. To debug with Vim, you need to install the Vdebug plugin. So let us do that. I have never set this up, so let's read the instructions. I need to have Vim compiled with Python 3 support. For this I need to install the Vim Nox package. Apparently I already have this installed. The website says that the actual installation is no different for any other Vim plugin. You can install it manually, so clone or download the tarball of the plugin and move its contents into your Vim directory. And then call help text vimdoc to generate the necessary help text afterwards. That seems to be the easiest, so let me do that. I don't think I technically need all of this, but I will copy this into my Vim directory anyway. Yes, I use the old school midnight commander. I think I only need to copy all the directories. Now I will start Vim and run this command. I get no output, so that should be good enough. With this I should now have installed this plugin, but I have no idea how to use this. So let me go back to the documentation. I should be able to run help vdebug. Let me try that. That will also confirm whether everything is installed correctly. It has some lovely ASCII art. Introduction, installing the plugin, setting up the debugging environment. Setting up the debugging environment I've already done, but let's jump to starting the debugger. The default key for starting the debugger is F5. So let me just do this and see what happens after closing the help. I'm getting the warning that the socket is already in use. This is likely because I already have another IDE running as well. Let me go fix that first. I still have PHP Storm running, it seems, so I'll have to stop the debugger here by going to run stop listening for debugging connections. Now I will press F5 again. It now says Vdebug will wait for a connection, which, if everything else is set up correctly, I should now be able to refresh the Xdebug website in my browser and it should pop up here in the debugger. But nothing happened. That is because I haven't triggered the debugger. It still does not trigger the debugger. Let's see what the Xdebug log on the command line says. It says, could not connect to debugging client, tried localhost 9003. Something should be running on that though. Let me check why not. I do that with netstat. And then I'll grab for 9000 again. Vdebug is listening on port 9000, which is Xdebug's old port, whereas I've configured Xdebug to use the current default, which is 9003. We need to fix that in either the configuration of Vdebug or in Xdebug itself. Let's find out how to do this with Vdebug. I'm sure the documentation will tell me. There seems to be some options, but I don't know which ones exist. I also don't know how to find out. I'll open the documentation, perhaps that helps. There seems to be a help page for setting debugger features. Let me go to that. This seems to be just features for the protocol, which we probably shouldn't mess with. Instead, we probably should look at the options. Quickly setting options with Vdebug opt. I'm sure we can set the port with that. And indeed, there's an option called port. So let me set that. that seems to have done the job. I will now start the debugger again by pressing F5. And it says it's waiting for connection now. Again, I will refresh the browser so that Xdebug initiates a connection again. Again, this didn't trigger the debugger. Maybe I should close Vim and start it up again first. I've restarted Vim and I will now press F5 to start the debugger. I will check with netstat what the port number that it is listening to is. It still uses port 9000. And I don't know why. I can just be cheeky and change the VDebug code myself. I think I'll go with that for now. I'll search for 9000 and I'll change it to 9003. I will now restart Vim again and press F5 and use netstat to see what has happened. Finally, it's listening at port 9003 now. I will now refresh my browser again. Indeed, it seems to be waiting for some action now, which is usually a good hint that the debugger is involved. Let me switch back to VDebug and Vim. And indeed, it seems to have done something here. Let me make this a little bit smaller so that we can see what's going on. I think the red line means this is the location where we are at. Now, just like with the normal debugger, we should be able to step through this. But I don't remember which key presses to use for this, so let me check the documentation again. Aha, in the documentation it says step over and step into F2 and F3, which are probably the ones we want to use. I'll switch back now and try these out. So F2 should step over. And indeed, it seems to do that. In the other windows, you see quite a few things here. You see in the top right start and stop for stopping and starting the debugger. You see the stack, which we only have one level deep now. So let me step into the next function. And if we do this a few times, we'll see that the stack changes. On the right hand side, you can also see the superglobals and user-defined context. You can navigate to these by using Ctrl W and then the arrow right or left or up. I'll move my cursor to superglobals and press enter and see what happens. And indeed it switches then to the superglobals. I'll now go back to the locals and see which other things I can inspect. So this prefix length as PSR4 is an array of 8. I suppose I can see what's in there by pressing enter on this line. And indeed it now shows me what is in here, just like you'd expect with a normal debugger. Another enter collapses the property. I will now navigate to the stack window above by pressing Ctrl W up. And press enter on the second stack frame, called 1. And indeed it also switches the code around on the left hand side and the variables in the bottom right pane. I will now continue executing the script by pressing F2 and F3. Now it must also be possible to set breakpoints, but I don't quite know how to do that yet. Let me have a look at the documentation. Apparently pressing F10 toggles a line breakpoint. Let us try that out too. So I'm now on this line and I'll set a breakpoint with F10. It does not indicate that anything has happened. Let me continue the execution of the script and reload the page to see whether the breakpoint triggers. I do that by pressing F5. It now says that the debugging session is ended and VDebug will wait for another connection. I have refreshed the page and I'm sure the debugger is now showing information again. Indeed, it stopped at the first line, which seems to be VDebug's default way. Let me press F5 to see whether the breakpoint gets hit. And indeed, it stops exactly on the file where I've set the breakpoint. There doesn't seem to be any variables here. So let me navigate to the top right pane to switch to the different stack. I see. Apparently there is a variable It just doesn't show you that right away on a breakpoint. You need to navigate to the debugger watch first. That is okay though. We'll just continue debugging by pressing F2, or rather F3 to step in. We're not really interested in the composer autoload, so let's see how we can step out of a function as well. The documentation states that we need to press F4 for that, so let me do that too. That seems to work just as I expect. I am sure it is possible to set breakpoints on all kinds of other files as well, but I'm not too familiar with Vdebug yet to be able to show you that. However, if you just want to step through code, this seems to be a really simple way of doing so if you're already familiar with Vim. And with this I've shown you how to debug with Vim and Vdebug. I'm not an expert on this because I don't really use Vim for debugging, I rather use an IDE such as PHP Storm or VS Code. But if you want to debug on a live server, this might be a good way of doing so, because you can run almost on every system and you only have to listen to localhost in that case. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and I'll be back next time.